What's up guys, Howdish here, and today we are jumping in with more Destiny 2 news and updates. Of course, the holiday season about to be in full swing really, but there are still things to talk about in relation to Destiny 2, so a couple of minor updates from Bungie here in this video. They recognise the community's distaste for the latest Solo Ops edition. We'll talk about what's going on there, as well as a really easy way to get some of our Pinnacle gear with minimal effort, also available for solo players, and a pretty bonkers farm for tier 5 rewards in the dungeon, which makes life significantly easier than we've seen in other endgame content. Pretty much anyone can get tier 5 loot from the dungeon, so we'll round that up. Also, Destiny Rising is getting a beloved Destiny 1 raid. That's pretty bonkers. Plus we have teasers for the next major update for the game and a handful of other things to talk about. So, if you guys enjoy this one, do us a big favor, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. I appreciate you all, as always, but now let's get into it. So some initial updates for today. A sad bit of news here. Firstly, Vince Zampella, who some of you guys will be familiar with, the co-creator of Call of Duty, plus they also founded Respawn Entertainment, who made Titanfall and Apex Legends, and played a major role in a whole bunch of video games over the past couple of decades. Unfortunately passed away after a car crash just a couple of days back. Obviously very sad news, totally worth a mention though, because you can't really downplay the impact that Vince had on video games in recent history, which is why there's such a big outpour from the wider video games industry in the wake of this news. So obviously very sad news and someone that will definitely be missed in the video game space. On to Destiny news here. Players have been discussing the Solo Ops Typhon Imperator, and it's not a very popular Solo Ops activity. Of course, it's the only new one in Renegades. DMG did comment and said, "What would you like to see changed about it? Have seen feedback on the reward aspect, but anything else?" The reward aspect being that this takes quite a long time to run, so some players are saying we should get more than one feature drop. As a general thing, it's just a very slow activity, a lot of waiting around, and quite long encounters in general. And of course, there's a bit of a spectrum there in Solo Ops, but compared to the faster activities, Typhon Imperator just feels very slow. Give us your thoughts about it down below. In other news though, for anyone engaging with the Dawning quite a bit, there's a really good armor set in Pinnacle Ops right now called Swordmaster. Obviously with Praxic Blade being featured, it's totally worth getting that armor if you can, as it's really potent with swords. The same applies to the dungeon armor, but baking cookies, especially if you have a lot of materials, is a reasonably reliable way to get tier 5 Swordmaster armor, as well as other portal armor sets and weapons from the Renegades update. So if you're after that set, but perhaps you're a solo player or don't have a team to run Pinnacle Ops content, bake as many cookies as you can and hopefully you'll be able to get a juicy tier 5 set of Swordmaster armor. Other quick updates here. Destiny Rising announced that a D1 raid is being introduced to the game, and that is Crota's End, which will be arriving in January. In a weird kind of way, thank God it's not Wrath of the Machine, because if that was the case, I think a lot of players would lose their minds given how much we've asked for it to return to Destiny 2. Although we'll see what Destiny Rising brings in next, I guess. Kind of wild to think that you'll be able to play Crota's End on a mobile phone, essentially though, with the update coming in January, so share your thoughts about that. Of course, in the new year, a bit later on though, early spring, is when Destiny 2 gets its next major update, which is Shadow and Order. As we've discussed recently, Bungie have just updated the description for the Renegade season, referencing the syndicates on Tharsis and the Lawless Frontier content. But before they updated it, it appeared to actually be a hint towards what we'll get in Shadow and Order, where it said, race the Dredgen and their outlaw mercenaries to a weapon of shadowy legend, storm a Hive weapons foundry, and prevent the Dredgen from expanding their corrupted arsenal. Which is a very different tagline, obviously, for some content we don't yet have. So more than likely, this was mistakenly placed there when it is actually the description for the Shadow and Order update. And three big components we can pick from that. Firstly, the Dredgen in general still being featured and being a prominent part of this, but a weapon of shadowy legend potentially could reference a new exotic mission or something if we're going to get one, like what we saw in Ash and Iron. You'll have to give me any speculation on what that weapon could be down in the comments section. And additionally, a Hive weapons foundry, which could relate to new activity content, either a new portal activity, like we had with Reclaim in Ash and Iron, or indeed an exotic mission or something in itself, which would be pretty wild. So that's what we can look forward to, and I'd love to get any thoughts or speculation you have on what that could be down in the comments section. The next thing I wanted to speak about though is a very efficient way to get tier 5 loot easily from the new dungeon. Now, as has been discussed, we have to apply feats to reliably earn tier 5 gear, but there's a way that you can farm the first encounter for tier 5 drops, and it includes all drops from the dungeon with the exception of the exotics, so you can get all of the armor pieces and all of the weapons only by playing the first encounter with one of the challenges active. And it's a tiny bit tricky, but I think most decent teams with a little bit of practice will be able to farm this very reliably. So we've been running this with the first 4 feats enabled. One of those feats is for encounter challenges, and on the first encounter of the dungeon, the challenge is essentially to kill the nameless apprentice enemies only with the piker sparrow thing that I always forget the actual name of. The falcon. There we go. And if you can use the falcon to kill those nameless apprentices, you'll complete the encounter challenge. And in combination with the feats, that means the encounter can drop anything from the dungeon loot pool. So it could be any of the armor pieces, helmet included, and any of the weapons. So if you're able to get a full team, basically, you want one player to do the Falcon job to go and get the buff required to take the shields off the nameless apprentices. Then you probably want to assign another player to take out the Bane enemies that are around the arena, as they drain health, which is really annoying. But if you put one player on to purely deal with those, and then another player to actually ride the Falcon and kill the nameless apprentices, you can kind of work as a team. Obviously, the player with the buff will have to actually take the nameless apprentice shields off. The player with the vehicle can focus on killing the nameless apprentices, and if the runner with the buff is confident, they can kind of hop on and off the sparrow as well to assist with vehicle damage, or they can just focus on the behemoths, apply weaken and things like that to them to chew them down nice and quickly. But the time trial for the encounter means you have to basically complete it in 5 minutes, which is more or less what you'd have to do anyway to actually get the clear reliably. And if the 2 falcon or vehicle players kind of stick together, take the shields off the apprentices, weaken the behemoths and the apprentices, and then use the vehicles to kill them all, it's actually really easy. And because you're completing one of the encounter challenges, as we mentioned, you can get anything from the dungeon. Plus, there is the focusing option at the back, so we ran it for about an hour, and as you can see here, I finished my tier 5 full set of armor, and I think I've got every dungeon weapon as a tier 5 now, mostly with pretty decent rolls, so if you've got a really good team, you're going to stomp your way through this, but also, even if you don't typically play dungeon content or LFG for the dungeon or whatever, I'd totally encourage as many players as possible to take advantage of this farm, because you can basically obliterate the entire dungeon's loot pool just in the first encounter. The only things you can't get, as we mentioned, are the exotic items, the crystal and the heirloom exotic. So it's a really good way to farm the dungeon, and some players have even done this particular version solo on the first encounter farm as well. I'll link a video from Duck giving tips on how to do that down below. Not sure if Bungie intended for players to get all of the tier 5s just from running the first encounter, but seems inevitable that players would do it given that this is pretty much the easiest encounter to farm the challenge on, so keep it in mind. A very final mention right here, Ryan Gilliam from Rogue, who did some early kind of Renegades interviews before it dropped with Bungie devs, was commenting to Alison Lurs from Bungie on Twitter and referenced very much looking forward to see what you've cooked up for when we go monster hunting with mom and dad back home in Chicago next year. But just kind of reminded me that Old Chicago is a serious possibility for an upcoming destination for potentially the Shattered Cycle expansion. And of course, it's been referenced a few times, with minor ones in Renegades, but also the much bigger teasers to it in Edge of Fate, with Lodi originally coming from Chicago. And there have been plenty of references to potentially, finally, going to the Old Chicago destinations. So really hoping that we'll see that for Shattered Cycle. And of course, for the next expansion, Bungie will be going full Destiny again, as it's not a collab with Star Wars this time. Although we did have a discussion yesterday in a video with indications from Bungie that it's possible some delays could happen in the pipeline for major content drops, especially as they tackle feedback around the portal, engagement systems, and all the other issues in Destiny 2. And that possibility of delays is also backed up by recent leaks, so you can check that video out if you are interested down below. But for today, that is what we have to speak about. So if you've enjoyed the video, a rating very much helps me out on the channel. Share your thoughts on everything we've discussed as always down there as well. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in, and whatever you get up to, happy holidays, and I hope you have an awesome day.